Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show. Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. I'm David Lawrence and I'm delighted today to be with Kevin Murphy, the Managing Director of Business and Corporate Delivery within OpenReach. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, David. Yeah.
Kevin, I've known you for a number of years and I'm really excited to share a number of topics with our listeners today, particularly on the delivery of the London Olympics from the telecoms side.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that in a little while, but perhaps if you can give for our listeners a bit of a background about yourself within BT and more recently with OpenReach.
Sure. So I started my career, I suppose about 25 years ago. Degree in engineering, went into telecoms through Ericsson, 15 years in the cable industry, and joined BT nearly 10 years ago as the Director of Network Operations. So ran all the UK telecom networks, data centres for BT. I then went into the Olympics for nearly 3 years, which I know you want to touch on. And over the last few years, I've been running the voice platforms, so everything from the national public telephone network, corporate voice over IP, conferencing, and also built a mobile network for BT as well. Before coming into OpenReach, where I am now, and I'm the Managing Director for Business and Corporate Delivery. That covers off basically anything that's non-residential in terms of installing high capacity data connectivity. So, you have broadband into your home. Businesses want basically higher speed broadband, typically over fibre. The technology is known as Ethernet. And we supply into corporate offices as a standard sort of installation. But we also supply network for other communication providers. We build a core network between their telephone centres or data centres and their customers. We also build out a lot of the mobile infrastructure. So pretty much every mobile phone cell site, we are building fibre out to each of those cell sites, whether it's in the middle of the country, down railway lines, top of buildings. So again, we just offer fibre connectivity and build out to all these different points across the UK. Currently have 4,500 people, and we've pretty much got, I'd say, the best and biggest reach of any of the communication providers to deliver pretty much fibre anywhere in the UK.
And what does a typical day look like for you now?
No 2 days are different. I suppose, in this sort of role, like yesterday, for example, started the day off at the Cabinet Office, actually, talking to government about installation of services through different government departments. I then had a back over to headquarters, had a meeting with the union, which is great, because again, we've got a big workforce, lots of representation, and really talking about the transformation that's happening within OpenReach, and a lot of changes, and obviously how that impacts our people. And I then went within about 20 minutes to do a webcast to all our managers. There's about 500 managers within in the team, at all various different levels. We've got a great studio facility that we broadcast internally to. And then I finished off the day with actually a couple of phone calls to customers. So we have a lot of large communication providers. There's Vodafone and TalkTalk and Sky, even other parts of BT Consumer, for example, BT Business. So I had a number of phone calls to those customers as well.
Well, fantastic. And Kevin, I wanted to touch on this today, particularly around your time with the London Olympics.
Yes.
I think you've got an amazing story. Why don't you just tell us, it was 3 years that you spent on that programme?
Yeah.
Perhaps if you can just give our listeners a little insight into what happened and how that came about.
So BT were the first corporate sponsor for London 2012. They won the contract back in 2008 to supply the games with telephone or telecom services, basically. And I'd only joined BT, I think 6 months or so, and it was the end of a meeting. I put my hand up and said, can I get involved in the Olympics? Because it was just the day after we'd won the bid. Interesting, there was a lot of people came to me afterwards and said, "What in the name of goodness are you doing that for? That's a career killer of a job. It'll all go wrong." And I said, "God, you're mad. This is like once in a lifetime." Anyway, it took about a year and a half, and ultimately I wheedled my way into the program, and ultimately I became responsible for the operations. So I was the director of operations for the services that BT put into the Olympics, and that was everything from the normal telephone service, but we also supplied all the data connectivity into each of the venues, whether they were sporting venues or logistics venues or office venues. We did all the TV connectivity from the International Broadcast Centre outwards. We also hosted London2012.com. That was in our data centre infrastructure. We went out to the internet through the normal channels, and basically everything around those venues. It was a heavily connected games. Was done over BT's infrastructure.
And what did I'm sure there's some stories of the highs, the lows, some tears and laughter.
Yes.
Can you share some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah. So I think some of the biggest memories for me were really about the people and the way that the organisation changed, and it's left a bit an indelible imprint on me as a leader, because when I joined, I have to admit there was a bit of an ego kick in as well. Who wants to be involved in the Olympics, and for several years I think my mum thought I was Seb Coe, and it was brilliant. And there was, I don't know if you remember, in 2011. There was a whole series of test events for the games, and because most of the people never had done an Olympics before. There was a bit of a gypsy caravan of people that used to follow the games around, and of course the IOC themselves. But pretty much the vast majority had never worked on the games before. So we had all these test events running through London in the summer of 2011. And I had expected to be, the big leader, the big man, walking around all the different venues, telling everybody what to do, taking responsibility, and having a really great time. But when it really came to the point, first of all, there was security, because there was a massive police and army security wrap around the venues, even at the test events. And whereas I thought I would, be going in to tell everybody what to do. I couldn't get in, so I couldn't act as the big leader. The second thing was, quite amazingly, all our guys and ladies that we had on the games, they joined together in each of these venues, and you just saw a merging and a disappearance of functional silo working. So you had the telecom people working with the logistic people, working with the sporting presentation, working with the low cog technology team, and they all merged together to form one seamless team, and you couldn't really tell the difference between people. The third thing I realized was that in that moment, it was really our people who held the BT brand in their hand. So even for all my notions about leadership and management and control, really it was really down to that single individual person. If he decided to pull out a card or not do a connection or make a mistake, they really held the brand in their hand at that moment, because the people who arrived during the test event and then subsequently in the games was actually not just the athletes, it was the world's media appeared. And really at that point during 2011 into 2012, they were looking for reasons why London would fail. And of course, there's plenty of examples of big problems for certain companies, but they were all looking for a reason to fail. And I had this horrible realization that really our people had the power of the brand. There was a massive audience watching everything that we were doing. I was not in control, and the only thing that really was left to do was to give control away to our people. And there was almost like a reversal of the typical pyramid structure of top down. It reversed, and my role from 2011 through 2012 was really about serving the men and women in the games to make their life and their job a success. So leadership just became servant leadership. It really was resources, money. We give people credit cards to make sure that they could just spend money. There was no approval process. We said this is what you should think about, but it was just do the right thing, and then foster this camaraderie and clear purpose and mission that existed within the games. So it was a great example of what I've subsequently come to know as self-organizing or self-management teams, where there is a very clear purpose. We are having an opening ceremony, and it will happen at 9 o'clock on the 29th of July, come what may. Be ready. You had clear mission within that venue to deliver a flawless experience for the athletes and the spectators and the global TV audience. And you had, I'd say, probably the best people, or even people who became the best that they could during that experience, all working seamlessly together for that period building up to and during the games itself.
And just to give our listeners a sense of scale, so how many people were involved, perhaps at least from the BT side?
So there was just shy of 1,000
Yep.
people from BT, and it was quite temporary. So there was a period building up to the years before it was just a couple of hundred people. Typically project management, some engineers, designers, that sort of thing, and account type management, operational people. But one of our biggest challenge was just in the 6 months up to the games, we had to ramp that up from 200 up to nearly 1,000.
Yep.
So we had to hire 800 people, very close to the games, train them, get them onboarded, support them, enable them, and have them ready to rock and roll during the games time themselves. So there was over 90 different venues involved, and I say that there was clearly the Olympic Park and the stadium, etc. But there was lots of distribution hubs, lots of back offices that you'd never even hear of. But we had to have people everywhere and ready to go should anything happen.
And what do you think that experience has taught you about leadership?
Well, I think since the games, I spoke to a number of academics. So Gary Hamel, I met him at the London Business School. He taught a lot about it with him, and there's people like Frederick Laloux, who's a book around reinventing organisation. There's a theme that runs through it, and I think mission and purpose always come first. And if you can have that clarity, and the Olympics is quite unique, and I talked to Gary Hamel about, so how can you recreate the Olympics? Well, obviously you can't, but if you have the ability to chunk it right down into a mission that people can get their head around, or a space of responsibility that people can assume, give them the control, which typically as you ascend through management, you pull control up with you, but actually give them control. So I don't like the word empowerment because it's just become a bit of a word that's bandied around. For me, empowerment really means giving power away, and if you can create a boundary where people can work in, typically as a team, ideally in a team of like 10 to 12, give them a clear purpose and mission. Give them the resources that they can fulfill the mission, and allow them the freedom to work within that particular function or area, it is amazing what people will do with peer-to-peer pressure or allegiance to one another, rather than some hierarchical command and control effort that tends to be prevalent in large organisations. And it does work.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had the chance to be on the phone today or this week to the Olympic team in Japan, and they were asking you for your advice for the 2020 Olympic team, the telco provider, what advice would you give them?
So I think from a people point of view, I think you will naturally attract people who put their hand up and run towards you. So you have a great opportunity of selecting the best people. So be prepared to take the best people. I would encourage them to think about the organisation, to empower the people, with giving them, all the right resources, as I've said. I think from a technology engineering point of view, it's really just test everything, and trial everything, and make sure that you go through every scenario. I think from a program point of view, the reason the BT Olympic experience was flawless is because we had considered everything and went way beyond what you would normally do in a program. And I think, again, we've taken a lot of those lessons back in, and certainly for NTT in Japan, we've already spoken with them about our experiences, and the design is critical, the level of redundancy and resilience, but test the life out of it, and get the best people, organise them in a way, and then trust them, because they will do things that no manager could even predict.
That's fantastic. And bringing us back to today's to today, I should say. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Well, a couple of things spring to mind. So business is all about people, and it's all about relationships. So whether it is with a customer or a supplier, or obviously the people who make up the business, or your team members, it is all about people. So really, you have to think first and foremost about people, because I think you get great customer service through people, and you have to really encourage that environment. So that was, business is a people business, of course, but it's really important to keep that front and center all the time. I was also told by my first mentor, who was, when I was in the cable industry, a guy, Mike Sheik from New York Telephone Company. It's one of the small cable companies, 9X, and he used to run downtown Manhattan. So it was all World Trade Center, Wall Street, all that, and a lot of high pressure financial businesses. And he was the one who really made the connection in my early 20s around the importance of quality engineering equals quality customer service. And it's probably normal now, but that was in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, and he brought a lot of that American philosophy about great customer service, and he linked it back to quality engineering. And I've always tried to keep that and hold a certain standard for our engineers, through my career, because I know when it goes wrong, it can go really wrong, but it starts, do it right at the first point, and you'll deliver it through to our customers.
Fantastic. And how do you see the industry changing in the future, particularly over the next couple of years, with things moving so fast now? Yeah. And how will that probably affect your ability to attract and retain the best talent?
Well, I think we're in a period of, I think we're actually at unseen levels of acceleration. Just even in the last 10 years, and it was just before the Beijing Olympics in 2008. You had the iPhone was brought out in 2007. And just over that 10-year period, what has happened? People are walking around with powerful computers, the cloud, all of that content data explosion. Obviously, within the telecoms industry, it has driven a lot of demand for high bandwidth. So we just see, certainly within Openreach, we are had been traditionally a telco with a big copper network. We are now in that mass migration to fibre, and that will only accelerate as 4G turns into 5G. there's a word like in the industry now about densification, so making the network more dense. So having smaller cells, you go down Oxford Street, you might have 100 small cells rather than maybe 7 or 8 macro cells on top of buildings. You'll see them on lamp posts, you'll see them on top of telephone boxes, anything that has power, and similarly within building as well. So there's going to be an incredible acceleration of content and data, connected cities, Internet of Things, etc. But that will drag tons and tons and tons of bandwidth, to deliver to that demand that's been created. So, Openreach is a great business, and it will be, growing that network over the next decade. We will turn into a fibre business, and it'll all be about, how we make it easy and simple, to build out this future network that, cities, towns, and even in rural areas and customers want and are demanding now, is almost like a right.
Yes.
You do hear stories of people want broadband more than gas and water, which seems a bit bonkers, but that's what some of the statistics say. So it's the telco industry has got a bright future.
I absolutely believe you there. Well, look, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great to have your insight, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Super. Thank you very much.